The Whispering Portrait, Part 2. Chapter 12, The Locket of Lost Souls. The small silver key felt impossibly heavy in Lenora Ashbourne's trembling hands. She sat before her writing desk, the antique jewelry box resting before her like a dark secret waiting to be revealed. The intricate ebony surface gleamed under the flickering candlelight, its silver filigree forming delicate patterns that felt almost protective. But what had it been protecting? Lenora swallowed hard. She had seen Clara alive in the spectral vision of the ballroom. She had seen her begging for mercy, heard her whisper, "He betrayed me." And now, in her hands, she held the key to something Clara had left behind. With slow, deliberate movements, she inserted the key into the lock and turned it. A soft click. The latch released. Lenora hesitated, a deep sense of dread and anticipation coiling in her stomach. Then, she lifted the lid. Inside, nestled upon faded blue velvet, lay a locket. It was delicate but elegant, its silver surface tarnished by time. A thin chain coiled around it like a serpent, and an intricate floral design was etched into the front, a rose in full bloom. Lenora's breath caught in her throat. A blue rose. Like the one Evangeline had held in the nursery. Like the scent that lingered in Clara's forbidden wing. This had belonged to her. With trembling fingers, Lenora lifted the locket from its resting place. The chain was cold, unnaturally so, as if it had been locked away in ice instead of velvet. Slowly, she pressed the clasp. The locket snapped open. Inside, behind the glass casing, was a miniature portrait of a man. Lenora's heart stopped. She knew that face. Not Lord Sebastian Ravenshade. But another Ravenshade. A man with piercing blue eyes, raven dark hair, and a face carved in both charm and danger. Edgar Ravenshade. The true heir of Blackveil Manor. The man Clara had loved. Lenora's pulse roared in her ears. This locket had been a secret. A precious treasure Clara had kept hidden, a memory of a love that had not been meant to exist. Her fingers traced the miniature portrait, the painted eyes staring up at her with a frozen intensity. Had Edgar loved her? Had he betrayed her? And why had this locket been hidden away, locked in a place only Evangeline seemed to know? A cold whisper slipped through the room. "You see it now, don't you?" Lenora stiffened. The voice was too close. She turned sharply, but there was no one there. Yet the air in the room had changed. The fire in the hearth flickered violently, casting long, jagged shadows against the walls. The candlelight trembled as though caught in an invisible breath. Then, a sound. A slow, deliberate creak. Lenora's gaze snapped toward the mirror. And her blood ran cold. Her reflection was not alone. Behind her, standing just at the edge of the dim firelight, was Clara Ravenshade. She was pale as moonlight, her sorrowful dark eyes fixed on the locket in Lenora's hands. The midnight gown clung to her frail frame, its embroidered silver thread shimmering faintly as if woven from starlight. But it was her expression that sent terror lacing through Lenora's veins. Because Clara was not looking at her. She was looking at the portrait inside the locket. And she was weeping. A silent, haunted sorrow, as if she had waited so many years to hold this memory once more. "You see it now," she whispered again, her voice aching with grief. Lenora gripped the locket tighter, her breath shallow. "You loved him." Clara nodded. Lenora swallowed, her voice softer. "And he betrayed you?" A shudder passed through Clara's ethereal form. Her gaze darkened. Then, very slowly, she shook her head. Lenora's breath caught. "Then who?" A flicker of something tragic and terrifying crossed Clara's expression. She lifted one delicate hand, and pointed toward the mirror. Lenora's heart stopped. The reflection in the glass shimmered, warped, changed. The room behind her was no longer her own. Instead, she saw the grand ballroom once more, but not as it had appeared in her vision. This was after the ball had ended. The chandeliers had burned down to dying embers. The floor was stained with spilled wine, or was it blood? And at the center of the room, Clara stood with Edgar. But they were not alone. A third figure loomed between them. Lenora's stomach twisted into a knot of ice. Because she knew exactly who he was. The man in black. The one who had grabbed Clara. The one who had told her she knew too much. The one who had whispered, "That was your mistake." And now, finally, in the broken mirror, Lenora saw his face. Lord Sebastian Ravenshade. A gasp tore from her lips as the vision in the mirror shattered. The glass splintered, cracks spiderwebbing across the surface, distorting her own reflection. She turned back to Clara, but the spirit was fading. Her sorrowful eyes flickered with something urgent. Something final. "He took everything from me." The whisper slid through the air like a dying breath. Then, she was gone. The fire guttered out. The candle's flame snapped into darkness. Lenora sat frozen in the pitch-black chamber, the locket still clutched in her hands. Her mind reeled. It had not been Edgar who had betrayed Clara. It had been Sebastian. And he knew she had discovered the truth. Lenora exhaled shakily, the weight of the locket burning into her palm. There was one last secret to uncover. One final piece of the puzzle. How had Clara died? And more importantly, was Lenora next? Chapter 13, A Pact with the Shadows. The candle had died, plunging Lenora Ashbourne into darkness. The silence in the chamber was suffocating, wrapping around her like an unseen hand. The locket of Clara Ravenshade sat in her trembling palm, its weight unbearably heavy. She had seen the truth in the mirror. Clara had not been betrayed by Edgar. It had been Lord Sebastian Ravenshade. And now, Lenora knew too much. A gust of wind slithered beneath the door, carrying with it a familiar scent, wilted roses and decay. The air shifted, pressing down upon her like a presence unseen. She was not alone. Her breath hitched. She could feel something standing just beyond the veil of darkness, watching, waiting. Then, a whisper. "It was never meant for me." Lenora's fingers clenched around the locket, her body rigid. Clara? Silence. But she felt her. Clara was near. "Tell me what happened," Lenora pleaded, her voice barely a whisper. "Tell me how you died." The shadows around her deepened. The room felt colder, as though she had stepped into the heart of winter itself. Then, from the darkness, "He was afraid of what I knew." A pulse of energy rippled through the chamber, setting the firewood in the hearth cracking violently. The mirror, already fractured, split further, the shards reflecting slivers of something not of this world. And then Lenora saw it. A vision, flickering, shifting, pulling her into the past once more. She was no longer in her room. She was in a candlelit chamber, deep within the hidden corridors of Blackveil Manor. The walls were damp, the stone floors uneven beneath her feet. A single iron candelabra flickered against the darkened walls, casting long, twisting shadows. And at the center of the room, Clara knelt before Lord Sebastian Ravenshade. Her midnight gown pooled around her in an elegant, tragic cascade of fabric, her dark curls loose over her shoulders. Tears glistened in her sorrowful eyes. But Sebastian's face was void of sympathy. He stood tall, dressed in his dark formal attire, his gloved hands curling into fists at his sides. His expression was a mask of cold resolve. "You love him," Sebastian murmured, his voice smooth as silk. Clara lifted her gaze. "Yes." Sebastian's jaw tightened. "You know what Edgar has done, do you not?" he asked, stepping toward her, his shadow stretching across the stone floor. Clara trembled. "He has done nothing but love me." Sebastian laughed softly. But there was no humor in it, only something bitter and sharp, edged with something far darker. "You are a foolish girl, Clara. And fools meet tragic ends." She inhaled shakily. "Please." I will leave Blackveil. I will leave Edgar. I will go far away, and you will never hear from me again. Sebastian tilted his head. It is not that simple. Clara stiffened. Sebastian turned away, stepping toward a small, ornate wooden chest in the corner of the chamber. He lifted the lid slowly, as though savoring the moment. Then, he withdrew something. A small, glass vial. Lenora's breath caught in her throat. Poison. Sebastian held the vial between two fingers, studying the dark liquid inside. His voice was soft when he spoke. You must make a choice, Clara. She stared at him, her body trembling. Drink this, and I will spare Edgar. Clara's eyes widened in horror. You would kill him? Sebastian smiled faintly, as though her words amused him. I would do whatever must be done. Lenora's pulse thundered. This was it. This was the night Clara had died. She had not been pushed. She had not fallen. She had been given a choice. A cruel, impossible choice. Clara's hands shook as she reached for the vial, her breath ragged. Sebastian, her voice cracked. Why are you doing this? Sebastian's expression remained unreadable. Because you were never meant to belong to him. The word sent a violent chill through Lenora's bones. She saw it then, the truth beneath his mask. Sebastian Ravenshade had not betrayed Clara for power. Nor for family honor. He had loved her. And that love had turned into something twisted. Poisonous. Deadly. Sebastian's gaze darkened as he took a step closer. I loved you first. Lenora gasped. Clara swayed, her breath catching. Her fingers trembled around the vial, her eyes searching Sebastian's face. And then, slowly, she understood. Tears slipped down her cheeks. She did not beg. She did not plead. She simply whispered, You never loved me at all. Sebastian's expression flickered, just for a moment. Then, it hardened. Drink. A heartbeat of silence. Then, Clara lifted the vial to her lips. And drank. Lenora screamed. The vision shattered around her, throwing her back into the present. Lenora hit the floor, gasping for breath. Her body trembled violently, her heart hammering against her ribs. She knew the truth now. Sebastian Ravenshade had murdered Clara. He had loved her in the most wicked way imaginable, by destroying her. Lenora pressed her hands to the cold wooden floor, her breath ragged. And then, the candle beside her flickered back to life. The flames rose unnaturally high, twisting like reaching fingers. And a figure stood within the dim light. Sebastian. But not the ghostly version of him. The real Lord Ravenshade. His dark eyes burned into her, unreadable, but not surprised. Lenora's blood ran cold. He had been waiting for this moment. Waiting for her to uncover the truth. Sebastian stepped forward, his boots silent against the wooden floor. His presence loomed, suffocating. Then, in a voice as soft as a serpent's whisper, he said, You should have left the past buried, Miss Ashbourne. Lenora's breath caught in her throat. Sebastian knew. And now, she was in more danger than ever. Chapter 14, Evangeline's Drawings. The air in Lenora Ashbourne's chamber was thick with unspoken truths. Lord Sebastian Ravenshade stood before her, his dark eyes unreadable, his expression carefully composed, too composed. He had found her, kneeling on the floor, breathless, with Clara's locket clutched in her trembling hand. And he knew. He knew what she had seen. What she had uncovered. Lenora forced herself to meet his gaze, even as her pulse thundered in her throat. You should have left the past buried, Miss Ashbourne. His words lingered like poison in the air. Lenora tightened her grip around the locket, its cold silver pressing against her palm. And if I had, she asked, her voice steady despite the fear creeping into her bones. Sebastian's gaze darkened. You would have been safe. A bitter chill swept over her skin. Like Clara? The silence that followed was deep and dangerous. Sebastian's jaw clenched, but when he spoke again, his voice was eerily calm. Too calm. Come with me. Lenora hesitated. Why? His lips curled into a ghost of a smile, but there was no warmth in it. Because you and I both know this house has eyes and ears everywhere. And you wouldn't want to wake the dead, would you? Lenora swallowed hard. He was toying with her. Testing her. She did not trust him. Not after what she had seen. But she had no choice. Sebastian led her through the dim corridors of Blackveil Manor, his pace measured, his presence suffocating. They descended the grand staircase in silence, the flickering sconces casting tall, stretched shadows along the walls. Lenora barely noticed where they were going, her mind spun wildly with what she had learned. Clara had been poisoned. Forced into a cruel choice. And Sebastian had been the one to press the vial into her hands. But what of Edgar Ravenshade? Had he tried to save her? Had he even known? And what had Sebastian meant when he had said, "You should have left the past buried"? Had he been speaking of Clara? Or of what was still to come? The questions coiled inside her mind, thick and suffocating. Then, a sound. Soft. Delicate. Like chalk against parchment. Lenora turned her head sharply. They were passing the nursery. She stopped. Sebastian took a few more steps before realizing she was no longer following. He turned slowly, his expression unreadable. What is it? Lenora's heart pounded. I want to see Evangeline. Sebastian studied her carefully, his gaze flickering toward the half-open door of the nursery. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, he stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. Lenora inhaled slowly, steeling herself, and stepped inside. The room was dimly lit, the heavy drapes allowing only the faintest sliver of moonlight to seep in. The scent of old lavender and candle wax lingered in the air, mixing with the soft, almost imperceptible smell of dust and something floral, like dried roses. And there, seated at a small wooden table, was Evangeline Ravenshade. She did not react to Lenora's entrance. She sat with her head bowed, her long blonde hair cascading around her face, the soft scratch of charcoal against paper the only sound in the room. Lenora's breath caught. The little girl was drawing. Her small, delicate fingers moved methodically over the parchment, sketching with slow, deliberate strokes. But it was not a child's drawing. Not of flowers or birds. Not of dolls or fairy tales. It was something else entirely. Lenora stepped closer, her breath shallow. The drawing was of a woman. Tall. Elegant. Draped in a midnight gown. Lenora's pulse shuddered. Clara. She opened her mouth, but before she could speak, Evangeline lifted her head. Her dark, knowing eyes locked onto Lenora's. I told you she was waiting for someone. Lenora's throat went dry. Evangeline lifted the paper, holding it out to her governess. Lenora took it carefully, her fingers trembling against the parchment. The charcoal lines were crisp and precise, unnervingly lifelike. Clara's sorrowful eyes seemed to follow her, dark and filled with something unspoken. But there was something else. Lenora's gaze flickered downward. Clara's hands were outstretched. And in them, she held something. Something small and round, glinting faintly in the candlelight. Lenora's breath caught. It was the locket. The very same locket Lenora had just discovered. Evangeline tilted her head slightly. You found it, didn't you? Lenora's fingers tightened around the parchment. Yes, she admitted softly. Evangeline blinked slowly, as if she had already known. Then, she picked up another piece of parchment. Lenora frowned. What is that? Evangeline hesitated. Then, without a word, she slid the drawing across the table. Lenora picked it up. and everything inside her went cold. It was another drawing of Clara. But this time, she was lying on the floor. Her eyes were closed. Her lips were parted. And around her neck were dark bruises. Fingerprints. Lenora's vision blurred as the realization struck her like a crashing wave. Clara had not only been poisoned. She had been strangled. Her breath hitched painfully. She lifted her eyes to Evangeline, whose expression had not changed. The little girl's voice was soft. She didn't die from the poison. The word stabbed through Lenora's ribs like ice. Evangeline lowered her gaze, her small hands pressing flat against the table. They wanted it to look like a sickness, she whispered. But when the poison didn't take her fast enough, he had to, she stopped. The silence was unbearable. Lenora could not breathe. Who, she whispered, though she already knew. Evangeline's small fingers curled against the table. Then, finally, she lifted her head. And in the dim light, her eyes filled with silent, heavy knowledge. You already know. Lenora swallowed, her hands shaking. Sebastian. He had not given her the poison to spare Edgar. He had given it to Clara to trap her. And when she had not died quickly enough, he had killed her himself. A cold, burning rage ignited in Lenora's chest. Everything Clara had suffered, everything she had lost, was because of his jealousy. His obsession. And now, Lenora understood. Clara's ghost had not simply lingered out of sorrow. She had remained for revenge. Lenora's hands curled into fists, her breath trembling. She lifted her gaze to Evangeline. What happens next? She whispered. The little girl blinked once, then, softly, she answered, she's waiting for you to finish it. Chapter 15, The Unfinished Letter. The weight of Evangeline Ravenshade's words hung in the dim nursery, thick and suffocating. She's waiting for you to finish it. Lenora Ashbourne could barely breathe. She looked down at the drawing of Clara, her lifeless form sketched in haunting detail, the bruises around her throat unmistakable. Sebastian had not merely watched her die. He had made sure she did. The realization burned inside Lenora like a slow, creeping fire. Her hands trembled as she set the drawing down on the small wooden table. She lifted her gaze back to Evangeline, whose dark eyes, too knowing for a child of 8, watched her with quiet intensity. What do I need to finish? Lenora whispered. The little girl tilted her head. Then, she pointed toward the wardrobe in the corner of the nursery. Lenora swallowed hard. There was something hidden there. Something Clara had left unfinished. She rose from her chair, the floorboards creaking beneath her weight as she slowly approached the wardrobe. The air felt heavier, the scent of dust and faded roses wrapping around her like an unseen hand. With hesitant fingers, she reached for the brass handle. She pulled. The door groaned open. For a moment, there was nothing, just rows of Evangeline's dresses, neatly arranged. But then, Lenora's sharp gaze caught something tucked behind the hanging fabric. A small wooden box. It was old, its edges worn with time, the Ravenshade crest burned into the lid. Lenora reached for it, fingers trembling as she lifted it from its hiding place. She turned back to Evangeline, her breath shallow. Did you put this here? The little girl shook her head. She did. Lenora swallowed hard. She took the box to the table, setting it beside the drawings of Clara. Then, carefully, she lifted the lid. Inside, a bundle of yellowed parchment, bound with ribbon. And at the top, an unfinished letter. The ink had faded, but the writing remained delicate, elegant, Clara's hand. Lenora unfolded it carefully, her breath catching as she began to read. To the one who finds this. I write these words in fear. I know that I do not have much time left, and so I must leave this behind in the hope that one day, someone will know the truth. That someone will understand what has happened to me. I loved Edgar. And he loved me. But I have made a mistake, one I cannot undo. I did not see the danger until it was too late. Sebastian. The sentence cut off abruptly, the ink trailing across the parchment. Lenora's pulse quickened. She had been interrupted. Her fingers trembled as she scanned the rest of the letter, but there was no more. Only blank parchment. Clara had never finished her last words. Lenora exhaled shakily, her heart pounding against her ribs. She looked back down into the box, rummaging through the papers. There were other letters, neatly folded, their wax seals broken. Some were addressed to Edgar Ravenshade. Some were never sent. Lenora's fingers brushed against another item tucked beneath the letters. Her breath caught. It was a ring. A gold band, simple yet elegant, set with a deep blue sapphire. She lifted it carefully, her pulse roaring in her ears. It was Clara's wedding ring. Had she taken it off before she died? Or had someone taken it from her? A sharp gust of wind tore through the nursery. Lenora gasped, the flame of the single candle snuffing out as the room plunged into darkness. Then, a whisper. So close it brushed against her ear. Find him. Lenora's stomach twisted. The air in the nursery grew colder, the shadows stretching too long against the walls. The papers in the box fluttered as though touched by invisible hands. Something was happening. Something was waking up. She turned to Evangeline, her voice unsteady. Who? Who do I need to find? The little girl blinked. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she said, Edgar. Lenora's breath caught. Edgar Ravenshade is dead, she said softly. Evangeline's gaze did not waver. Is he? The words sent a violent chill down Lenora's spine. The house shifted around her, the very air humming with something unseen. A deep, twisting thought coiled inside her mind. Could it be possible? Could Edgar Ravenshade still be alive? And if he was, why had he never come back for Clara? A floorboard creaked outside the nursery. Lenora and Evangeline both froze. A shadow passed beneath the door, stretching across the wooden floor. The air thickened. Lenora's blood ran cold. Sebastian. He was outside the door. Listening. Watching. Waiting. Lenora's breath shallowed. She could not stay here. She had to find the truth. And now, she knew where she needed to go. She would return to the West Wing. She would find the rest of Clara's letter. And she would uncover what happened to Edgar Ravenshade. Because if he was still alive, then she was not the first woman Sebastian had tried to erase. Chapter 16, The Crimson Moon. The moment Lenora Ashbourne extinguished the candle and slipped from the nursery, she knew she was being watched. The corridors of Blackveil Manor had always been steeped in shadow, but tonight, they seemed alive. The air was thick, suffocating, pressing against her skin with an almost sentient awareness. And somewhere in the silence, Sebastian was near. She could feel him. A ghost of movement flickered in the periphery of her vision, a shadow shifting just beyond the candlelight. But she did not stop. She tightened her grip around Clara's locket, its cold metal biting into her palm. In the pocket of her gown, the unfinished letter lay folded, along with the wedding ring she had found hidden inside the wooden box. They were pieces of the puzzle, fragments of a past that had been twisted and buried beneath lies. And now, Clara was guiding her toward the final truth. Her breath hitched as she reached the grand staircase. Beyond the arched windows, the sky was bathed in an eerie, crimson glow. The full moon hung low, swollen and red as blood, casting an unnatural light across the moors. Lenora's stomach tightened. The crimson moon. Evangeline had mentioned it before, the night of Clara's death. Was this an anniversary? Had Lenora stepped into the same moment in time where Clara had once stood, waiting for her fate? Her pulse quickened. She had no time to linger. She turned toward the forbidden West Wing and made her way back into the shadows. The corridor was colder than before. A bitter chill curled through the air, like something had been stirred from its slumber. The heavy silence stretched around her, broken only by the sound of her own breath. Lenora's footsteps slowed as she neared Clara Ravenshade's portrait. The candle flame quivered. Something felt wrong. She lifted the light, letting the glow spill over the oil-painted surface. Her breath caught. The portrait had changed again. Clara's hand was no longer pointing to the hidden door. Now, she was reaching toward Lenora. The painted fingers stretched out, as though pleading for her to take them, her sorrowful eyes now filled with quiet desperation. A sharp gust of air whispered through the corridor, though no windows were open. "You're close." Lenora shuddered. The whisper was not in her mind. It was real. She inhaled, steadying herself. Then, with deliberate fingers, she pressed against the hidden seam in the wall. The secret door groaned open, revealing the dark passage beyond. Her candle's glow barely touched the descending staircase. The air smelled of earth, dust, and something deeper, something rotting beneath the stone. She swallowed hard. Then, gripping the candle tightly, she stepped inside. The deeper Lenora went, the colder it became. The stone walls pressed close around her, and the scent of dampness and decay thickened in the air. Then, a door. Heavy. Iron-bound. Lenora hesitated only for a moment before pushing it open. The candlelight spilled into a forgotten chamber. Her pulse slowed. This was no ordinary room. It was a study, long abandoned, its furniture covered in dust and age. Papers lay scattered across the desk, their ink faded with time. And at the center of the desk, a sealed envelope. The wax seal bore the Ravenshade crest. Lenora's breath hitched. She reached for the envelope, her fingers trembling as she broke the seal and unfolded the letter inside. The final letter Clara had written. The one she had never been able to send. Lenora held her breath as she read. To Edgar, if you are reading this, then it means I have failed. I tried to warn you. I tried to leave, but he found me first. Sebastian knows. He has always known. I loved you, Edgar. I always will. But I am afraid our love has sealed my fate. He has given me a choice, but I see now, there was never truly a choice at all. If you return to Blackveil, do not trust him. Do not let him lure you into his web of deception, as he did to me. He will do to you what he did to me. He will. The ink trailed off abruptly, a deep stain smudging the parchment. As though Clara had been interrupted. Lenora's fingers tightened around the fragile letter. This was the proof. Sebastian had not killed Clara in a moment of passion, he had planned it. He had trapped her. Poisoned her. And when she had not died quickly enough, he had taken her life with his own hands. Lenora exhaled shakily, pressing the letter to her chest. Then, the candle flickered. A sudden shadow moved behind her. She turned sharply, and froze. The figure of a man stood in the doorway. His face was hidden in shadow, his tall form motionless. The candlelight wavered, casting flickering shapes against the damp stone walls. Lenora's stomach twisted violently. "Sebastian," she whispered. No answer. But the figure stepped forward. The candle flame died. And in the pitch-black silence, Lenora heard his breath. Not Sebastian's. Someone else's. A whisper slipped through the darkness. "You finally found me." Lenora's pulse stopped. The figure was not Sebastian. It was Edgar Ravenshade. Lenora's body refused to move. He was supposed to be dead. Edgar Ravenshade had vanished years ago. No records. No grave. No one had spoken of him since Clara's death. And yet, here he was. Standing before her. Tall. Gaunt. His dark hair, once sleek, now hung in wild strands around his face. His cheekbones were sharp, his clothes ragged with time. But his eyes? they burned with the same storm of sorrow and rage Clara's had. Lenora's lips parted, but no sound came out. Because in that moment, she understood. Edgar Ravenshade had not fled. He had not abandoned Clara. He had been trapped. Hidden. Buried alive within Blackveil Manor. And now, he had returned. The silence stretched unbearably. Then, Edgar's lips curled into a slow, ghostly smile. My brother took everything from me. Lenora's breath came in shallow gasps. Now, we will take everything from him. A sharp gust of wind howled through the chamber. And somewhere, deep within the manor's bones, a door slammed shut. Chapter 17, The Hidden Passage. For a long moment, Lenora Ashbourne could not move. She stood frozen in the dim candlelight of the forgotten chamber, her breath caught between disbelief and terror. Edgar Ravenshade was alive. His presence was impossible, yet undeniable. The man before her, gaunt, ragged, his dark eyes hollowed with time and grief, was no ghost. He was flesh and bone. He had been here all along. Trapped. Hidden. Buried within Blackveil Manor. And now, he was awake. Lenora's voice barely escaped her lips. Edgar? The name felt like a sin, like something that should not have been spoken aloud. Yet he smiled at it, slow and bitter, the sharp angles of his face shifting in the dim light. You found me. His voice was hoarse, weathered, as though he had not spoken in years. Lenora swallowed hard, her fingers tightening around the unfinished letter in her hands. Clara had tried to warn him. She had known something was coming. And now, standing before the man she had died for, Lenora understood, Sebastian had not just murdered Clara. He had erased Edgar. Lenora inhaled shakily. How are you here? Where have you been? A flicker of something dark passed across his expression. Below. The single word sent a chill through her bones. Below? Did he mean beneath the manor? The hidden tunnels? Had Sebastian, his own brother, sealed him away, just as he had buried the truth of Clara's death? Lenora shook her head, anger rising through her fear. Why didn't you escape? Why didn't you? Edgar's smile sharpened. You think I didn't try? Lenora's breath hitched. You think I didn't fight? Didn't claw at the stone until my fingers bled? His voice was like ice, laced with something unfathomable. Lenora stepped back. Edgar's eyes never left hers. He made sure I couldn't leave. Lenora's pulse roared in her ears. Sebastian. It had always been Sebastian. He had killed Clara. And then, rather than kill Edgar, he had destroyed him in another way. He had taken everything. His love. His home. His life. And now, Edgar had come back. A sudden crack echoed through the chamber. Lenora flinched, turning sharply, the mirror behind her split further, jagged lines racing across the glass. A warning. The house was shifting. Awakening. And they were no longer alone. Edgar exhaled slowly, tilting his head toward the ceiling. He knows you've found me. A deep, unsettling silence followed those words. Then, a door slammed upstairs. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Coming closer. Lenora's body went rigid. Sebastian. He was coming. Edgar moved before she could think. He crossed the room in 2 steps, his long fingers wrapping around her wrist, his grip was like iron. Lenora gasped. Come with me. His voice was low, urgent, there was no room for argument. He pulled her toward the farthest wall, where the stone was damp with age. Without a second's hesitation, he pressed his hand against it. A deep, grating click echoed through the chamber. Then, the wall shifted. Lenora's breath caught as the stones groaned, pulling apart, revealing a narrow passageway plunged into darkness. She turned to Edgar, pulse racing. How? He didn't answer. Instead, he pulled her inside. The moment they entered, the wall behind them sealed shut once more. And Blackveil Manor swallowed them whole. The air in the passage was thick with dust and dampness. Lenora stumbled, barely catching herself against the stone walls. Edgar did not stop. He moved with certainty, his breath coming in measured exhales. "Where are we going?" she whispered, her voice barely carrying. He did not look back. "There's another way out." Lenora's mind spun. Another way? Sebastian had sealed Edgar away, but not killed him. Why? Had he been too much of a coward to finish it? Or had he needed him alive? Lenora's fingers tightened around Clara's letter. They kept moving, deeper into the black maze of tunnels. The air was so thick it felt almost alive, pressing against her skin like unseen fingers. Then, a sound. A whisper. Soft. Faint. "Lenora." She froze. The candle flickered violently in her hand. That voice, it was Clara's. Edgar stopped, his body going rigid. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. He nodded once, his jaw tight. Then, another whisper. His close. Lenora's breath hitched. She turned, her candlelight dancing against the stone walls. There, a shadow moved in the tunnel ahead. Not Edgar's. Not hers. Someone else. The whisper died. The air went still. Then, a new sound. Not a whisper. Not a breath. But footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Echoing through the passage. Lenora's heart stopped. She turned sharply toward Edgar, her voice urgent. "We have to go, now." Edgar nodded once. Then, they ran. The tunnels twisted around them, the damp walls narrowing, the ceiling pressing low. The candlelight wavered violently, sending fractured shadows dancing across the stone. And behind them, the footsteps quickened. Lenora's pulse roared. He was coming. Sebastian. He had found them. She didn't dare look back. She just ran. Her breath came in ragged gasps, her heart hammering against her ribs. The air grew colder. Then, a fork in the tunnel. Edgar grabbed her arm, pulling her left. But Lenora caught something in the corner of her vision. Another passage. Narrow. Hidden in shadow. She hesitated. A whisper curled against her ear, Clara's voice. "Go right." Lenora's eyes widened. She turned sharply, pulling Edgar with her. "What are you?" he started. "Trust me." And just as they rounded the corner, the footsteps stopped. A low, dangerous chuckle echoed behind them. "You can't run forever, Lenora." Sebastian's voice slid through the air like silk. Lenora's blood turned to ice. But she did not stop. She ran, deeper into the darkness. Deeper into Clara's secrets. Because now, there was no turning back. Chapter 18, The Truth of Blackveil. The tunnels twisted like a labyrinth, the damp stone walls pressing close as Lenora Ashbourne ran, her breath shallow, her pulse hammering. She had no time to think, only to move. Only to survive. The echo of Sebastian Ravenshade's voice still clung to the air behind them, smooth and knowing. "You can't run forever, Lenora." The words curled into her mind like smoke. Sebastian was not chasing them. He was hunting them. He knew these tunnels. He had used them before. And if he had hidden Edgar away in this darkness for years, then who else had he hidden? What other secrets rotted beneath Blackveil Manor? Lenora didn't dare look back. She focused only on moving forward. Edgar ran beside her, his grip firm on her wrist, guiding her through the darkness. "This way," he hissed, pulling her sharply down another corridor. The air grew colder. Lenora's lungs burned, her legs aching beneath the weight of exhaustion and terror. But she could not stop. She glanced up, her candle wobbling violently, its light barely illuminating the path ahead. The tunnel was changing. The rough-hewn stone smoothed into polished walls, the dampness fading into a cool, stale air. Then, a door. Massive. Ornate. Carved with raven-shade crests, gilded ivy curling along the ancient wood. Edgar skidded to a stop, his chest heaving. Lenora nearly collided into him. Is this the truth of Blackveil? Lenora's breath caught. This was it. The secret Sebastian had buried. The one Clara had died trying to expose. She pressed her trembling hand to the door. The wood was freezing. It felt almost alive. Like the house itself was breathing beneath her fingers. Edgar exhaled slowly. Then, he pushed. The door groaned open. And inside, the past was waiting. The air in the room was thick with dust and time. The candlelight flickered, revealing a chamber sealed away from the world. But this was no simple hiding place. This was a prison. Lenora staggered forward, her breath shallow. At the center of the room, beneath a veil of cobwebs and neglect, sat a wooden writing desk, its surface covered in forgotten letters, ledgers, and tattered parchment. Beside it, a bed. Its sheets gray with dust, the imprint of a body still pressed into the mattress. Lenora's stomach turned violently. This was where Edgar had been kept. This was where he had disappeared. A lifetime stolen. A love torn apart. She turned to him, her voice shaking. How long? Edgar exhaled sharply, running a hand through his tangled hair. Too long. Lenora's fingers trembled as she brushed away the dust from the desk. The papers were fragile, brittle with time. She picked up one, scanning the faded ink. It was an accounting ledger. Dates. Names. And Clara's name, again and again. Lenora's pulse quickened. She grabbed another letter, unfolding it with careful hands. To Sebastian Ravenshade, the matter is settled. The woman will not be a problem anymore. I trust you will keep your end of the arrangement. D. Ashbury. Lenora's blood ran cold. She stared at the name at the bottom. Ashbury. That was her family name. The candle flickered violently, her heart slamming against her ribs. This wasn't just Clara's past. It was hers. Lenora's breath came in short, shallow gasps. This was impossible. It was her name. Her own family name. She grabbed another parchment, another record. And there, again, was the signature, D. Ashbury. Lenora's fingers clenched. Her father had been a merchant. A wealthy, powerful man, but he had died when she was young. She had never questioned his business dealings. But now, staring at the faded ink, she realized her father had been involved in whatever had happened to Clara. To Edgar. To Blackveil Manor. A deep, sinking horror coiled in her stomach. Had her family played a part in Clara's death? Had her father made a deal with Sebastian? She turned to Edgar, her voice hoarse. Did you know? He studied her, his gaze unreadable. I only knew there was a deal. But I never knew the name. Until now. Lenora could not breathe. Her own past was woven into this nightmare. She had not come to Blackveil by accident. She had been drawn here. Fate. Or vengeance. The house had called her back. The candlelight quivered once more, and suddenly, the temperature plummeted. The air tightened. A whisper slithered through the chamber. You see it now, don't you? Lenora's body went rigid. She was not alone. Edgar stiffened beside her. And then, the door behind them slammed shut. Darkness crashed over them. And Sebastian's voice filled the room. You should have stayed out of this, Lenora. The shadows stretched, and Blackveil Manor trembled. Chapter 19, Lord Ravenshade's Sin. The room plunged into darkness, the only sound the slow, measured footsteps approaching from behind. Lord Sebastian Ravenshade had found them. Lenora Ashbourne's heart slammed against her ribs, her breath frozen in her throat. She turned sharply toward the sealed door, her pulse roaring in her ears. There was no way out. Beside her, Edgar Ravenshade did not move. He stood rigid, his fists clenched at his sides, his dark eyes locked on the approaching figure. The candlelight flickered against the damp stone walls, revealing the sharp angles of Sebastian's face as he emerged from the shadows. He looked calm. Too calm. As if he had been expecting this. "What a lovely family reunion," Sebastian murmured, his lips curling into a slow, serpentine smile. His deep voice echoed through the chamber, dripping with amusement. Mocking. Lenora's breath hitched. Edgar said nothing. But the rage in his eyes was palpable. Sebastian tilted his head, stepping further into the room. He was blocking the only exit. "I warned you, Miss Ashbourne," he said softly. "I told you not to look for answers." Lenora swallowed hard, her fingers clenching around Clara's letter. "And yet, you followed me." Sebastian's expression darkened. "Of course I did." His voice was almost gentle, but the coldness beneath it sent a shiver through Lenora's spine. "I couldn't let you go wandering too far, now could I?" His gaze flickered toward Edgar. "Especially not with him." Edgar exhaled sharply. "Afraid I might tell her the truth, brother?" Sebastian's jaw tightened slightly, but his smile did not falter. "The truth?" he echoed, feigning curiosity. He lifted a hand, idly dusting off the sleeve of his immaculate coat. "And which truth would that be, Edgar?" "That you murdered Clara," Lenora said, her voice steady despite the terror twisting in her chest. Sebastian's fingers paused. The air thickened. For a fleeting second, his expression shifted. Then, slowly, his lips curved again. "Is that what you think?" he asked smoothly, stepping closer. Too close. Lenora did not move. "We know what you did," Edgar said, his voice laced with cold fury. "You forced her hand. You made her drink the poison." "She had a choice," Sebastian interrupted, his voice turning sharper. Darker. "She could have chosen to leave. She could have chosen to listen to me." Lenora's stomach twisted. "You never meant to let her go," she whispered. Sebastian's gaze snapped toward her. For the first time that night, his perfect mask cracked. His fingers twitched. Edgar took a step forward, his presence looming, dangerous. "You loved her." The words hung between them like a dagger. Sebastian's breath hitched. Then, he laughed. "Low? Cold? Cruel? Love?" he murmured, shaking his head. His smile was venomous. "You think it was love?" Lenora's body tensed. Sebastian stepped closer, his dark gaze burning into hers. "You still don't understand, do you?" The air shuddered. "Clara wasn't taken from me. She was mine to begin with." Silence swallowed the chamber. Lenora felt her heartbeat slow. Sebastian's words coiled through the air like smoke, suffocating, poisonous. She shook her head. "That's not true." Sebastian tilted his head. "Oh?" He lifted a hand slowly, his gloved fingers tracing along the dust-covered desk beside him. "Tell me, Miss Ashbourne, what do you know of the deal that was made?" Lenora's fingers tightened around the letter. "What deal?" she forced out. Sebastian smiled. "The one that gave Clara to me before she ever belonged to Edgar." A sickening chill shot down Lenora's spine. "You're lying." Sebastian chuckled, shaking his head. "Am I?" He stepped toward the desk, plucking one of the old documents from the pile. The parchment was brittle, yellowed with age, but the signature at the bottom was clear. D. Ashbury. Lenora's breath stilled. Her father's name. Sebastian's voice lowered. Your father promised Clara to me, Miss Ashbourne. Before she ever fell in love with my brother. Before she ever dreamed of escaping this house. Lenora's vision blurred. No. No, it couldn't be true. Sebastian's lips curled in victory. I owned her. And when she tried to leave me, I took back what was already mine. Lenora shook her head violently. You destroyed her. She spat. Sebastian's smile did not waver. Yes. And I would do it again. A roar of fury erupted through the chamber. Before Lenora could react, Edgar lunged. His fist collided with Sebastian's jaw, the sickening crack echoing through the stone walls. Sebastian staggered backward, his hand flying to his face, but his smile never faded. There it is, he murmured, licking the blood from his lip. The rage I've been waiting for. Lenora barely had time to breathe before Edgar struck again. The two brothers crashed into the desk, sending papers flying as they fought like beasts. Fists met flesh. The candlelight flickered wildly, casting shadows like writhing specters against the walls. Lenora backed away, her chest heaving, her mind spiraling. This was the truth of Blackveil Manor. Not just murder. Not just betrayal. A twisted bargain. A stolen love. A shattered soul. And now, history was repeating itself. Sebastian had tried to destroy Clara. Now, he would destroy Edgar. Unless Lenora stopped it. Her gaze snapped to the desk, to the old rusted letter opener glinting among the scattered documents. A weapon. Her fingers closed around the cold handle. The two men struggled against the stone floor, their movements frantic, violent. Lenora steeled herself. Then, she lunged forward. And the blade plunged into flesh. A strangled gasp echoed through the chamber. Blood dripped onto the cold stone floor. And as Sebastian Ravenshade collapsed, his lips parted in silent shock, Lenora whispered, "She was never yours." Chapter 20, The Fall of Blackveil. The blade slid free from flesh, slick with blood. Lord Sebastian Ravenshade staggered backward, his breath shallow and sharp, his once pristine coat stained crimson. Lenora Ashbourne's hands shook violently, the letter opener slipping from her grasp. Sebastian's dark eyes locked onto hers, wide with something beyond pain, disbelief. You? His voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. He took a step forward, then another, his body swaying like a marionette with its strings half cut. He did not fall. He would not fall. Not yet. Behind him, Edgar Ravenshade stood frozen, his chest heaving, his fists still curled from their earlier fight. But it was Lenora's hands that were stained with blood. She had done this. She had struck the blow. Sebastian's lips curled into a slow, grim smile. So, he murmured, his breath shuddering. You would kill for him, just as Clara would have. Lenora's stomach twisted violently. This was not about Edgar. This was not about love. This was about power. Control. Obsession. Sebastian had never wanted Clara's heart. He had wanted to own her. And when she had tried to escape, he had broken her. Now, history was repeating itself. Only this time, Lenora had refused to be the prey. The air in the chamber thickened, the candlelight flickering widely against the damp stone walls. Sebastian swayed, his hand pressing against his wound. But his eyes never left Lenora. You think you've won, don't you? His voice was low, bitter, curling around the edges of the room like smoke. Lenora lifted her chin, though her hands still trembled. You're dying. Sebastian chuckled, a quiet, broken sound. Am I? Then, he lunged. Lenora barely had time to react. Sebastian snatched the dagger from the ground, his movements faster than they should have been. A predator's final attack. She stumbled back, but not fast enough. The blade cut across her arm, a sharp flare of pain searing through her skin. Edgar roared, lunging between them. He slammed into Sebastian, sending them both crashing into the desk. Wood splintered. Papers exploded into the air. The candle toppled over, hitting the floor. Flames licked against old parchment. The fire caught. Lenora gasped as the embers flared to life, racing across the floorboards, consuming the dust-ridden curtains. The room was burning. Sebastian let out a low, guttural laugh, even as Edgar pinned him down, his fist driving into his brother's face. "Do you think this house will let you leave?" Sebastian hissed through blooded teeth. Lenora staggered back, her gaze snapping toward the fire. It was spreading too quickly, as if Blackveil itself had been waiting for this moment. The truth was finally laid bare. The house was done keeping its secrets. It was ready to fall. Edgar turned sharply to Lenora, his expression wild, urgent. "Go." She hesitated. "But, Lenora." Her breath caught. She turned, and ran. The tunnels were alive with fire. Smoke curled through the narrow passageways, choking the air, filling her lungs with heat and ash. Lenora ran blindly, her vision blurring, her thoughts racing. The house groaned, deep and heavy, as though the walls themselves were mourning. She reached the grand staircase, but the flames had already consumed it. The banisters cracked, the floorboards splintering beneath the weight of years of decay. There was no way out. Lenora turned wildly, searching, praying. Then, a whisper. "This way." A sudden gust of wind tore through the smoke, cutting through the heat. Lenora followed it. She had no choice. Her feet carried her down another passage, through a door she had never seen before. It led to a hidden courtyard, the night sky bleeding through the smoke-filled air. Lenora staggered forward, coughing, her lungs burning. She turned back and saw Blackveil Manor burning. The flames consumed everything. The ancient walls, blackened. The towering windows, shattered. The whispers that had haunted these halls, silenced. Lenora sank to the ground, her chest heaving. Then, a figure emerged from the flames. Her breath caught. Edgar. He stumbled through the smoke, his dark coat torn, his face streaked with soot and sweat. But he was alive. Lenora ran to him, grabbing his arm, pulling him away from the collapsing ruin. He did not speak. He only stared back at the manor, his gaze unreadable. Lenora followed his eyes. Sebastian was still inside. The fire had swallowed him whole. And as the last of Blackveil's cursed walls collapsed, Lenora could almost hear Clara's voice in the smoke. "It is finished." A cold wind swept through the ruins, carrying away the last remnants of the Ravenshade dynasty. Lenora exhaled. It was over. At last, Blackveil Manor had fallen. The sky was still tinged with red as dawn crept over the charred remains of the house. Lenora and Edgar stood in silence, watching the embers fade into ash. There was nothing left. Nothing but ghosts. Lenora turned to Edgar. "What happens now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. He did not answer right away. His eyes, dark, haunted, lifted toward the horizon. "We leave," he said finally. "We start again." Lenora hesitated. She had come to Blackveil Manor seeking employment. She was leaving with a story of ghosts and vengeance and love lost to time. And with a man who had been buried alive in the past. She took a slow breath. Then, she took his hand. Edgar glanced down, startled. She met his gaze, her fingers steady against his. "Then let's go." And together, they stepped away from the ruins of Blackveil Manor. Toward a future unchained from the past. Long after they had gone, as the smoke finally faded, as the ruins of Blackveil sank into the earth. A single whisper lingered in the wind. Soft. Content. Thank you, Lenora. And then, silence. The ghosts of Blackveil Manor were finally at rest.
Every story has an ending, but some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.